Welcome to PartyParty, Europe's premier platform for political professionals. My name is Josef Lentsch. I'm the founder. Welcome everyone to today's debate, AI in politics, use it or lose it. We want to bring some light to the question of how political parties already use or will be using AI in the future, particularly, of course, with a view to the European elections, but also to the upcoming UK elections in 24 or 25, and of course also with a perspective on the US elections next year. We are in Brussels today at the office of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation Europe. Viewers can ask questions online, and before we start and I introduce the panelists, a quick announcement. We are also launching today a new political tech vertical, which you can find on the website. We are currently recruiting for a political tech editor, so feel free to apply. And today also marks 6 months of PartyParty, which we're very, very happy about. Thanks for being with us. Let me introduce our panelists. On the left of me is Tomas Halasz. He's the co-founder of Trollwall AI. It's an AI-driven community moderation solution designed to monitor and protect on multiple social media platforms. It was used by the campaign of the now Czech President Petr Pavel and recently in the Slovak national election. Welcome, Tomas.
Welcome, thank you.
On my right is Katrien van den Broeck. She's the senior communications advisor for the Prime Minister of Belgium, Alexander De Croo. She's an experienced digital strategist and campaign manager and journalist. Welcome, Katrien. And next to Katrien, there's Tim Gordon. He's a partner in Best Practice AI, a boutique AI management consultancy working at the intersection of AI strategy, technology, and governance. From 2012 to 2017, he was the chief executive of the Liberal Democrats in the UK. So we have today here a panel, and welcome Tim, that has experiences with parties, in political groups, but also in the industry, and that is great. Juri Schnöller unfortunately had to cancel for private reasons, so I'm very happy to have you here. Tim, if I may start with you, there was a story in October about Keir Starmer suffering UK politics' first deepfake moment, which went viral with a clip appearing to show the UK opposition leader swearing at staffers, but it of course was a deepfake. So can I start by asking you, so what do you see as the current impact of AI in UK politics? How is it being used currently in and by politics?
So deepfakes are interesting. I think everyone is on hyper alert for deepfakes because clearly it's the topic that everyone's talking about. In the UK last week we had the big AI security safety summit, so everyone's very sensitive to this as a topic. Interestingly, I was first made aware of the deepfake by a bunch of tweets by Conservative MPs, the other side, warning that this was a deepfake and should not be treated seriously. So you can see people are quite sensitive to this already. I think there's three impacts though. First, clearly there's a chance to actually spread a lie about someone, and I suspect it won't be high profile figures because they're quite well watched. It will be small targeted niche issues that people aren't watching. The second is it clearly allows people who maybe have got bad things to hide to cover up. So they've got plausible deniability, the so-called liar's premium, where basically people, a large American ex-president could turn around and say, that was entirely made up, it's fake news. The third thing I think is interesting is that it's a way for people to spotlight an issue in a campaign. So if you produce a deep fake, people will start talking about that issue. So everyone may know it's completely false and completely fake, but the issue will then come up, how does this person treat their staff? How does whatever it might be? So it's an interesting way to think about it. How people are using AI in the UK politics at the moment is still very early days and they're being quite sensitive, but there are all sorts of ways they can use it positively, I suspect.
With the upcoming UK election in 24 or 25, do you anticipate that things like deepfakes will potentially increase, that there will be a potential disruption by an AI-driven deepfake or the like?
I can't predict what will happen. Clearly there's a risk of that. I think people are quite sensitive and watching it. I think the broader issue with misinformation with AI, of course, is the issue of hallucinations. So effectively AI is optimized. The latest generation of chatbots are optimized, the deep so-called large language models are optimized to give an answer, to sound convincing. And even if they have to make stuff up, they'll still produce something that sounds convincing. So in a world where I personally suspect 80, 90, 95% of content is going to be at least partially AI generated, the very real risk is that we have far more misinformation that emerges, even from good actors. So people who are writing a report will end up producing a report that's layered with misinformation. And the challenge, of course, is that to challenge misinformation takes a lot more time and a lot more resources than to push a button that produces bad information. So with this real issue that the entire information sphere is going to be effectively polluted by this increasingly bad content. And that's something which I think is a really big impact on how politics works, how we get good information to make good decisions.
Thanks, Tim. Katrien, Belgium also had its first deepfake moment actually in 2020 when Extinction Rebellion released a deepfake of then Prime Minister Sophie Wilmès linking COVID-19 with the climate crisis. So in your role, communicating for the Prime Minister, what's your experience with dealing with such situations, and how do you actually use or anticipate to use in the future AI in your job?
All these kind of fake videos like you had in the UK, we haven't had that yet, thank God. So I hope, but I'm afraid that this will come in the end. How we will be able to anticipate it, well, as he said, Tim said it, it's quite hard to counter fake. So we really have to, on a large scale, make people very aware of what can be happening. And I think put the channels, like the platforms, under pressure to do the more moderation than they do right now to make sure that this fake content doesn't get viral or goes far away. But yeah, I think fake's definitely going to be an issue for the coming elections.
Are you already using AI in whatever way for your work?
To be honest, really, really little. I think we use AI for automation of subtitles or texts or maybe content generation. There's this chat GPT Telegram bot where you can make me a social media post on, let's say, Halloween, and then you can ask them to change the tone of voice or whatever. So in very little basis we're using it, but not on a big scale, to be honest.
And how useful is it at the moment to you? Does it make you more productive? Does it spare your time?
For subtitling, it's 2 hours work that becomes 5 minutes. So definitely time saver. Yeah. So that's why I see loads of things that we could do to have more time for other stuff.
Thank you. Thomas, you are on the side of helping politics to fight trolling, also the name of your company, Trollwall AI. Also, AI-generated misinformation, as we already talked about. Can you give us a little bit of an insight from working with the campaign of Petr Pavel in the Czech Republic, but also in the recent Slovak elections? What's coming? What's happening out there at the moment? And how can parties potentially prepare for that?
Thank you for the question. I think generally it's not about if we're going to use AI or not. Everybody need to and will use AI in some form. And if the party will not, the opposite will for sure. And what can happen is, like Katrien said, it's a productivity gain, first thing. Like when we were working for the Petr Pavel's campaign, they started on 10,000 comments a week. In the election week, they had like 100,000. No people, no person, no staff can manage that. So this was a huge productivity gain that they was using auto, they was using AI to do some repetitive task. But unfortunately, where we are going is also the spread of misinformation will be also there will be gain of productivity on that. So all the parties need to get ready, need to leverage the technology of AI to fight for the good. But also, I think on the base level, the parties need to build trust with their voters. Because if the voters really trust you, no misinformation, no deep fakes will change their opinions.
So how do you inoculate voters against all the kind of the troll content, and how do you do this?
I think generally, like, of course. What we need to do is what is one of the ways how to find this information is to communicate proactively in advance. We expect that in Slovakia there will be deepfakes, and some parties communicated there will be deepfakes, and actually deepfakes came when everybody was expecting them, so last 2 days before the elections. And there was deepfakes against one of the party, and because the voters knew that they will come, some of the voters knew that it will come, the deepfakes effects were not so strong. But also, what the parties need to do is to leverage the technology also to make a social listening, to listen what's happening, because we all live in the bubbles. That there are topics, there are fakes which are circulating in the bubbles which we are not part of, and we need to use technology to listen what is coming.
Thank you. So if I can quickly summarize what was said is that 80 to 95% of the content will be at least partially AI generated or AI assisted in the future. Everyone, all the parties to some degree will be using it. We're still early days, but So, I mean, when everyone uses it, how will that potentially change the political power equation from your perspective? Who will win? Who will lose? I mean, today's debate is also, use it or lose it. Will you be able to win an election in the future without using AI? What's your take on that?
If I can, without using AI, for sure not. It's like you're not using social media. Yeah. Everybody gonna use it, but it's we need to understand that our political parties, or like parties we tend to say as a not populist, they generally are not so in advance with using a technology, and we are living in the world of hybrid warfare. Every country in Europe is attacked by Russian propaganda. And for sure they have a huge resources. They are using AI for now already generating disinformation, generating bots. And if we're not gonna use it, we're gonna lose the democracy. So yeah, we need to use it, we need to embrace the technology, and we need to use it for the good. We need to use it to engage with other voters, to build the trust.
Do you agree that everyone will be using AI? You will not be able to win elections without using it to a certain degree.
For sure. I mean, it's going to be about content creation, right? And so elections is about flooding the market. You're everywhere, then everybody will see you. So if you're a little party, this means that AI can help you, because you can use AI for generating more content and to be more present than the big parties. So it's going to be an advantage for little parties. But in the end, everybody will use it. So who will win? I think the one who has the most data, because you can create content really well if it's micro-targeted. So we have, for example, in Belgium, the right-wing party, they have their own app where they have news. So they have so much data on what people are reading. So before the elections, people will get micro-targeted emails about what are their core sensitive issues. They will get an email saying, we are the party, vote for us. It will be content, it will be AI generated. Nobody has to just click a button and it goes. And so the people who have the most data will have the advantage, I think.
Tim, you are working with and consulting with businesses who may be further in that regard, macro targeting and all those things. Do you agree that this will be what political parties will also do in the future?
Yeah, so there's two sides to the equation. On one side, if you think about how people will use AI, what we say to businesses is, what would you do with 1,000 interns? And essentially, these are 1,000 interns who can go and do all sorts of things for you. But in the same way you wouldn't fully trust an intern to release the Prime Minister's next speech or whatever, you still want a human in the loop to make sure stuff happens properly. But what they can is they go in a huge volume of things. What that means is you can do, to your point, vast amounts of very targeted, very personalized and very specific messages. So can you actually produce effectively, not quite yet, but communication of one, which is really understanding what goes out there. That is going to get very easy to do. The cost of doing that is going to fall through the floor, because effectively you're taking a variable cost of people and making a fixed cost of software, so the ability to do it at scale massively falls away. The second half of the equation, though, is who do you send it to? And this is where you're entirely right. The data you're sending it to is the really big challenge, because I can have the most personalized message. If I don't know what you care about, who cares? And so understanding what the recipients are, who the targeted people are, and so on, is going to be a really big part of the story. And that's where there's going to be a huge return to capital in terms of people spending money to build the data sets, to build the knowledge, and to some extent, more centralization of political campaigns to capture that. Taking a step back from all of that, though, all of this are tools and techniques. I still believe elections are won by people with the right message, who are the right leaders. And so all this stuff will have, 10%, 20% margin difference elsewhere. That can swing a lot of elections, particularly when they're tight. But big results, I think, will still come from the best leaders with the best messages.
So could I summarize? I saw you two nodding. So could I summarize that as AI will be necessary for campaigns in the future, but it will not be sufficient? Would you agree with that?
It's a means to an end, as always. It's not because you use AI you're going to win. But if you don't use AI, you're not going to win. I mean, I think that's the...
Totally agree, and also agree with the team. It's about the data. And Katrien has said, it's about the data, and that's where many parties have messed. They don't have the right data, and AI is like an intern. Like if you don't give a good input, you're not going to get a good output. And that's we're going to see that AI will not solve all the problems. It will be like really thousands of interns, but you need to have a proper strategist, you need to have a proper message, and you need to have a good data so you can target your voters.
It's garbage in, garbage out.
Totally.
But this is a transitional phase. You think about politics. We think of Roosevelt as the first politician, first president who used radio to win elections. It's associated with his brand and what he did. Kennedy was the first great politician of the television age. There's a famous debate he had with Nixon, where Nixon won, for the radio listeners.
Who's the first great politician for the AI age?
You got to my punchline. But the point is, effectively, you got Trump, who's the first great great politician in the Twitter age. The question is, who is going to be the first great president of the AI age? And this is going to be a transition where effectively we all use television in politics, we all use radio, we all use social media now, we will all use AI. And that transition will probably be associated with someone who comes in, and Kennedy might have won without TV. You still want a great leader who comes in with a great message, but AI will be part of the bag of tricks they bring. And when people win elections, whatever they do is brilliant. And people look at that and go, that's a brilliant campaign, we must copy that.
Katrien?
But that's always the thing with elections. It's only after you win that people will say, yeah, because we used. It's after Obama won that they said, oh yeah, social media was his, secret weapon. So we will know after the elections of Europe, I think, who was the one who was the best at using it.
I totally agree. It's one of the tools which will be in the bag, but will not solve all the problems.
But can I get back to one point that you mentioned, Katrien? You said potentially smaller parties are, stand to benefit more because it makes them more productive. Now, Tim, you said, well, but more money will help in creating data sets and so on. So who will benefit more, you reckon? Would it be the smaller parties, the upstarts, or would it be the more established, richer parties who can pour more money into building models and so on? So what's your take on this?
If I may, I think it will be the small parties, because, like, for example, we know one party which was using 8 to 10 moderators just for the comment section, which is hugely expensive for any party anywhere. And then come now President Peter Pavel, who used just like the tool and one moderator on part-time, and it had the same effect. So the most gain of productivity and most gain will be for the smaller parties, but they need to have some critical mass. You still cannot make like one person party like totally. So it will leverage, but then what will be still expensive will be advertisement. So to getting the message, because that's the thing about the media, about the social media, the spreading the message is getting harder and harder for not populist parties. So they need to spend more and more on advertisement, and there will be the gain will be not so strong.
Do you agree? The smaller parties will be benefiting more on the whole?
Well, you need both. You need the money, the big chunk of money to have your data, and also. But if you're a small party and you don't use AI, you're double. Let's put it that way. So I think
smaller parties with lots of money would be the ones who benefit the most.
Who use AI?
In the race between startups and established players, in the corporate world at least, there's always a race between, does the startup with a brand new super cool idea get distribution faster, or does the big established player get the innovation faster? It's almost a race between those two races. And so clearly, the big established party that's innovating fast will be in a better position, but often there are barriers to big established parties innovating. So if the big established parties could get over those barriers, they have an opportunity to get there fast. I think we should watch the US elections, because the US elections, billions and billions of dollars will be spent, and people are spending lots of money already, I'm sure, researching, preparing, targeting, this sort of stuff. And they will build tools that will effectively create sort of, out of the box packages, which I'm sure parties across Europe will buy to be in the right sort of place for the next elections. So I think that's where you're going to see a lot of this stuff happening. But I think there's still scope for small, innovative parties to do cool stuff.
Well, but if that's the case, I mean, that might mean on the whole that we see even more disruption in political markets, right? Because if the upstarts basically have a better chance by using the productivity gain, then they can disrupt quicker. And the other axis, of course, being the, let me call them the centrists from the left to the right versus the populists and extremists. Now, many populist and extremist parties across Europe have been quite innovative in developing new communications and so on. So what's your take on this? Do you see already populist extremists being more innovative at using AI? Or do you also see a chance for those more centrist parties to get an edge over them with AI?
I can't say I can comment directly on this, but what I'd observe is that one thing that AI does is it gives you something that is 80-90% good, but it's got lots of errors in it and issues. If you're a party who has less worries about the risk factor of getting it wrong, you're going to be able to deploy this a lot earlier than parties who may be in government and can't make mistakes. And so there's something here about the risk factor which is kind of important. You think about where AI has been rolled out. It rolls out really well in, say, for example, in Google advertising, where they might serve you a lot of rubbish ads or they might give you the wrong links, but by and large it's good enough. And you, effectively as a human being, do a triage. You choose what link to click on. When you try and apply that to self-driving cars, where no mistakes are possible, it's far harder to do AI. And so you take that back to the political sphere, parties, and this could be, for example, trolls or bad actors, they don't really care. They'll put 1,000 things out, 99% are rubbish, but 1 or 2% will get cut through and they win. If you're a political party, particularly a responsible political party, everything that goes wrong will be picked up and jumped on by someone. So you have a very different risk profile to that. I think that's quite a big impact on how this rolls out.
Thank you. Katrien, Thomas, what do you think? Are the populists, extremists better at potentially using AI, what you reckon?
Well, the algorithm works in their favor, right? Simplistic, nuanced, unnuanced messages, black and white. I mean, it works in their favor, and I think that's what we've seen the last years in European politics as well, that they get their message across way much easier on the social media platforms. And then if they are going to use AI to have even more content spread, they will even have that advantage even more, because the essence of the algorithm just works for them better, I think. That's why mainstream, or let's say centrist parties, should be using AI, because they're up against the advantage of the populist parties on the algorithms. So they should be using AI as much as they can to have at least the time advantage.
I totally agree with both of them. And what we need to also think is not about just the campaigning in a sense like what parties put out, but we know that many populist parties in Europe are like using dark campaigning. So they are not spreading the message under their own name, but they have like proxies or even like generally like Russian propaganda, which are spreading some message. And they already use AI, they already use deepfakes, and they don't care if their brand is not connected with it, but it's helping them. You know, there are so many disinformation about immigration, about climate, whatever, which helping populist far-right parties in Europe. And we need to get ready for this, because generally all the parties now need to understand that every single country in Europe is under hybrid warfare. Every single country in Europe which is supporting Ukraine is targeted by Russian propaganda. And it's not just about classical political parties fighting each other, but there is also like foreign entities fighting against you or your party or in democracy. So if our, say, democratic parties, either left-wing, right-wing, center or whatever, will not use AI, the opponents will. And that's the biggest risk, that we're going to fall down because we're going to think too much about how we or should be or ethical reasons. We also, of course, should be ethical, but we need to use AI in an ethical way to combat all of this.
Of course, politics is not just about elections. It's also about, you know, intra-party manifesto developing and other things, deliberating. One question from the audience is, you know, in terms of the impact of AI on the political system as a whole. As you know, there has been, in Denmark, there has been an AI candidate and an AI party. Now that might have been, to a certain degree, still kind of a joke, but you know, it is conceivable in the future that, of course, we have, to a large degrees, AI-generated manifestos and what have you. So do you think that AI will make parties and parliaments obsolete? Do you think it will weaken them? Do you think the human factor will become smaller in politics as a whole?
Well, if we can do anything, then it's to use AI to free up time to actually have more human connections and more human parts. I think we will always need human moderators, always. We can never trust AI because of all the hallucinating. I mean, there's always this risk that they're generating something wrong. But if anything, I think using AI to free up our time and space to have more human, you know, necessary contact amongst humans, I think that would be the way forward. But that's maybe naive.
Humans are voting for other humans.
Yeah.
So at the end, if the AI can do the repetitive task and can help in the productivity, I think at the end your candidates or the political parties can go more to the voters, go with for a beer for them, with them, and I think it will not make. I hope it will not make Parliament obsolete, because then it will be just matter of technical things. And I'm a I love technologies. I do AI startup, but at the end we need to understand that technology fails and also garbage in, garbage out. So there are biases also in AI. So we need to be very worried about that and leave the people to do the stuff people should do and the candidates should do.
Do you expect an AI party in UK?
Fight against a world where AI takes over and takes control. You know, it is absolutely critical, the political class, who don't fully understand often yet, like many of us, fully what's happening here, have to be on top of this topic. Because if we don't end up in a situation where the humans are totally in control, and we don't have strong democracy reinforced by this process, we're in a terrible place. We'll end up in some subpar democracy, basically operating on US data platforms, essentially deciding what happens in our parliaments and our governments, and that would be an absolute disaster. So we must remain in control. That said, AI is an incredibly powerful tool which politicians need to understand so we can use it, because I don't personally believe we're going to solve the problems of an aging society, the ongoing health issues, and above all the environment, unless we find ways to embrace AI and use it properly.
Thank you. But when we come to the structure of political parties, right? At the moment, in some political parties, there's quite a high degree of decentralization. I don't know, in federal states like Germany, the campaigns are very much run, for example, on the state level, and then of course at the federal level. So how will AI impact the structure, not just the campaigning structure, but also, of course, of political parties? What would you say? What would be the consequence? Will we see more centralized political parties? Will communication be, just run out of the federal HQ? What do you think?
Again, if a big chunk of the work that has to be done, let's say answering people, sending out emails, if all that can be automated, then more time can be freed up to have local, specific communication going on. Maybe even less centralized, because you can free up time, space, and people.
Sure, and if you are head of communication or head of campaigning, and you have 1,000 AI interns
yeah.
at your availability, I mean, who needs a big team? I mean, you need probably 2-3 people to actually, and perhaps somebody, a consultant to help you run the whole machinery. But you don't need 10-15 people in a war room anymore. Do you think that will be the reality?
I would disagree. I think there's always so much work to be done that we always need at least the 10-15 people in the war room. Just we can make more, because also other parties will make more. So I think that technologically wise, there will be centralization. There will be more data, more technology stack in the headquarters. But the local campaigning, the door-to-door, and organizing the events, whatever, can be decentralized.
And even more, maybe.
Even more. But I think generally the stack will be centralized, but a lot of things will not change so dramatically. Like generally, when we have a new technology, we tend to overestimate the short impact and estimate the long impact. It was the same with the social media, it's the same with the cloud, it's the same with whatever. Blockchain didn't work at all, so didn't change much. But I think this will be the outcome at the end.
So that would mean that the hype that we currently see about AI changing the whole game is perhaps an overestimation in the short term, but it will change the game in the medium term, and you need to prepare now. Is that what you're saying?
I would say yes. I would say yes. The basics of political campaigning will not change. You still need to have a candidate, you need to have a message, you need to have an emotion, and need to build the trust of the voters that it will be better if your party will be in the government than the other party. I think this will not change, and this didn't change for ages. Now this will be another tool which will gain. Of course, there will be big changes, like with the social media, they change the communication, but at the end, there's still people as a candidate, there's no social media candidate.
So I think these are choices that parties will make structurally, and eventually it's political forces that will govern where it goes, because you can see the technology could drive in either direction. So the sort of social media support, best practice speeches, all the sort of stuff that wraps around a prime minister at the moment is effectively available for every single local candidate, because they'll all be able to have their own war room, effectively, of people doing stuff and so on. So they'll be able to produce, they'll make a speech and they'll be able to produce 10 TikTok videos and 20 social media posts and personalized press releases to all the journalists locally and so on. So there's also ways that actually could push power down to local candidates to be MPs and so on. Equally, situations where you're thinking about particularly the data and the technology stack, that's something you might end up centralizing, because that's kind of, you want to do things. I think this is going to be a lot of it's going to be about power and who's responsible, because the danger here is that people are going to use these tools in all sorts of over-enthusiastic ways that will then lead to all sorts of blowback issues. And so the central parties will try and have some control. I, as I say, come from a political tradition that's all about decentralizing power and believing local campaigns are the best sort of campaigns to fight. So I think part of this is how you build tools centrally that make sure that you you've got the safeguards built in, the transparency, the ethics, the issues around bias. You're really making sure that the right tools are in place, but then effectively you're giving those tools to the frontline people fighting the constituencies or in the ground to really make sure they can maximize those opportunities.
And I suppose you will also need to train people then, right? You need to capacitate them, or do you think those things will be so easy for everyone to just go and use?
Training. I mean, we're still training people to use social media, and social media has been there since 2008, I think. So, yeah, definitely training.
Yeah.
By the way, training gets easier with AI.
Yeah.
Trained by AI people. Artificial training.
Coming to the European election, a few months ago we had a debate with the Gen 6 of the European parties, and I also asked the question, will you be using AI in the upcoming campaign? And they've been rather clandestine for understandable reasons. So we didn't get a lot of information. Some said they are not using it at all. Others said they will experiment with it. It didn't seem that anyone had a strategy, but rather kind of trying out stuff. So how do you expect AI to be deployed, tried, tested in the upcoming EU election campaign? Chatbots, ads, what do you think, where will be the most interesting use cases, if there's not a strategy, but experiments, so to say, at this point in time?
Excluding Trollwall, I hope, I'm sure the other parties will use like generative AI for generating a lot of ads, a lot of content, etc. And they will find out that it's not working most of the time because it's very generative. So need to find also, it will not solve the problem. So if the campaign manager doesn't know what to say, the AI will just make something generic and everybody will be fed up of that. We are already, I think, getting fed up of all these images which are obviously AI generated. So now they are testing, and I hope that parties till then will learn how to prompt properly, how to make it more their voice, and it will make a productivity gain. But of course, expect that there will be deepfakes. I expect there to be deepfakes in every single country in Europe, which is at least which is supporting Ukraine, so maybe not in Hungary, and it will be used against the government and generally against the European Union at its own.
So may I say, you think that the productivity gain for now is more on the other side, on the populist and extremist side, with deepfakes, if you think about the upcoming election?
I cannot say for sure because it's also like it's still hard. We have this really well done deepfake 2 days before the election in Slovakia in September, where like the chairman of the Progressive Party is supposed to say with the journalists how they're gonna rig the elections. Yeah? Of course, the voters of that party didn't believe that. But the other voters, which were against this party, believed that, and it's used as a mobilizing. And this was spreading pretty fast. Then the Facebook with the fact checkers, they put it down in 6 hours. But okay, but I saw the numbers, like it was spreading for thousands and thousands of shares. But you have another not deep fakes, like really easy Photoshop done, spreading disinformation, which was spreading like tens of thousands of shares. It was spreading even faster. So we'll see that. Of course, there will be some use, but we cannot say for sure it will totally change the game. We saw this information in 2016 presidential election in US, and they still debate how much it helped.
Chatbots, ads. What else? What do you see as the most interesting things party might try out in the EU election campaign?
Well, I heard now from a party, which I'm not going to mention, that they used AI to optimize pictures. So that's definitely, I mean, these things are happening already. And
what do you mean by optimize pictures?
Like you have a campaign picture and somebody's looking pretty, and then they check the heat maps of what people actually look at, and then the smile is made a bit even more warmer than they want it. So, I mean, they're optimizing the campaign pictures with these kind of techniques. That's a small thing, but I guess, I mean, people will be experimenting, as Tom said. But I think that what we will see is afterwards. It's the same with Cambridge Analytica. After the elections, everybody started like, oh, we have to regulate the platforms. I think the same thing will happen with AI. We will see a lot of fake, and then after the elections, everybody will start, or during the elections already, everybody will start worrying about how are we going to regulate all these things away from the platform.
We'll talk about regulation in a second. Again, Tim, what do you think?
I suspect it's too early for lots of really big major things happening. Clearly be used for personal productivity, it'll be used to generate all sorts of content at a great pace, it'll be used, I'm sure, to make nicer pictures and so on. It's probably a bit early for this to be much more than, probably, it may be as much marked by scandal as by input. So there'll be some politician who makes a speech that was generated by ChatGPT and it's got a bunch of fake facts in it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of mini scandal like that partway through the campaign. I think wait to the US election cycle when this thing is used at massive scale and then built into the underlying tools as well. So the sort of the polytech, which I know you're talking more about now, that's something where I think you'll start seeing a really big structural shift happening.
Coming back to regulation, of course, at the moment, the big EU AI Act is in the works and draft should be finalized by the end of the year. Do you see any impact on political parties right away? Of course, again, also in the context of the European elections. What's your take on that?
I think so far from our clients, they said that they are more afraid if they will be legal to use some kind of AI, because they don't know what will be the regulations. But generally, it's like with the GDPR. Like there was such a scare that the GDPR will totally get rid of all the targeting and everything, and it changed the topic. It changed the ways how we use personal data. But we'll see. I think that at the end we will see.
Any particular impact you see?
I think on a Belgian level, I don't know if that's completely correct, but I think few parties are actually dealing with this. If there's friends of mine who work in AI, they actually organize information sessions or whatever. The interest is very low, so I think it's I don't know if it's not on the forefront. If you look at the AI Safety Summit, about how many European leaders were actually there was Maloney. I didn't see many other European leaders, so I kind of feel like it's not on their first priority list, unfortunately.
I think it will have a big impact. I'm not sure that early next year is the time, because it'll pass what sort of end of this year, so it won't yet be enhanced, enforced in any sort of way at all. I think that'll provide lots of ammunition, though, for as the individual country regulators start thinking through what they're going to do and where they might put in positions in and so on. I think also it will probably begin to inform some of the stuff that we're seeing in the US and the UK, though both of those players probably won't do much until after the next election.
Thank you. And there's also a question from the audience that I want to bring in at this point. I agree that AI will be used in 80 to 90% of the content. But again, regarding regulation, do you think we will see more bans on AI-generated political content, and how would those bans work?
I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine that there will be ban on using ChatGPT to make a text. That doesn't make sense. It's like banning the computers.
Yeah, exactly.
But also technologically it's very hard. So it's almost impossible for anyone who claims that you can use an LLM to spot AI-generated content. It's very easy to dodge. It's very hard to make it works. Even on the television side, where there's all sorts of issues around watermarking and so on, you're basically in a war between the people who are trying to do bad stuff and the people who are trying to detect it. And you'll be in a sort of a race there. I think there are certain principles, though, which political parties should think about signing up to. Transparency, human in the loop, a whole series of ethical questions and dilemmas, which I think it would be good for parties that want to be in the European Parliament or at national level should start thinking through how they sign up to those things. And maybe PartyParty can be the sort of place that leads that sort of debate, because I think you could very much set a set of tone and standards that could drive better quality outcomes.
Thanks. On the other side, there have been ideas like watermarking content to signal this is real, this is not fake, this is not AI generated. What do you think about those kinds of ideas? Not to ban AI generated content, but to somehow differentiate non-AI generated content, authentic content.
I think at the end it will not work, one thing. The Russians will not mark it, second thing. And third thing, we have Photoshop since 80s. And we still cannot, people still fall down for really badly done Photoshop. So I think it's like, we are dealing with like how to regulate something to make it less impactful, but at the end it will have impact. Just we need to live with it. We need to embrace it. We need to mostly build the trust in the society, because that's the most thing. Like if the society doesn't hold together, you don't need to use AI. You can use very basic disinformation to put it down.
Yeah, do you think do you agree with that? We will have to live with it. We cannot regulate it away. There will be an impact because people fall for the simplest things, and the watermark might not in the end make the political difference.
Well, I'm an historian, so I'm not a techie at all. But so fake has been, around forever, ever. So I think the first thing will always be to educate people about what's fake and what's not fake, as soon as they're babies, I imagine. But at the same time, so it's education for sure, making sure that people know fake from false, but also regulation. I think at some point you will, I mean, even if you can't do watermarking, there should be like platform moderation on certain content, and if the deepfake is insultive, discriminatory, racist, I mean, there can be way more moderation on that side.
Yeah,
to at least limit out those parts of the
yeah,
fake.
totally agree that there should be some regulation. I'm saying that not the watermarking at per se like will work so well, but the social media, they should fight a lot on it. They have a couple of tens of moderators for whole Europe for disinformation. So there is a lot of to push from the regulatory side to fight disinformation in general. Yes, I agree with that.
So as a fellow historian, I think I'm agreeing strongly. I think there are two defence points. I think the creation of the content is very hard to limit. There are all sorts of interesting stuff around watermarks, which should be encouraged and supported, but I struggle to believe they're going to solve the problem. I think there are two things. One is we need to inoculate just all of us as electors, all of us as citizens, around how this content works and so on. I know the Finns have done some interesting work in that space. So what all can be done to really prepare us all for what is effectively a form of civil defence as much as anything else. It becomes actually a matter of national defensive mentality to get this sort of thinking about content right, whether it's media or social media and so on. And I think especially we need to really make sure that the people who own, if you like, the pinch points of the media and so on are also fully educated on this. And I'm not sure all of our politicians are yet in a place where they could claim to be fully educated. And the second pinch point, I think, is the distribution channels, because effectively our elections are being fought on foreign soil. They're being fought in US data centers on US data platforms. And whether it's Facebook or TikTok, Chinese data centers, or Twitter or wherever, X, wherever it might be, these are effectively being fought on platforms. And that's the place where the control can happen. Because it's very hard to stop someone creating something that's bad. We can do something about not allowing it to be pushed and distributed at scale and get the algorithmic push. And that, I think, is where a lot of the focus needs to remain.
Thank you. A question from the audience. We already talked about briefly the local sphere, and one question that has got a lot of support is how do local governments and mayors at the forefront, also the ones who are still the most trusted, right, in politics, how do they prepare to counter AI-generated content intended to spread misinformation, hate, and undermine democracy? How do you capacitate? Is it about training and educating? But how do you prepare those people who are already underwater, who don't have a lot of resources, but who still face this kind of barrage of potential misinformation to fight that on the local level?
Well, I liked your story where there's such a notion in the public, let's say, debate about deepfakes that when they come, people are actually ready for them. I really liked your example.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, remember, like when it was the first news from the CIA that the Russian will attack Ukraine. I didn't believe that. Most people didn't believe it, but they started saying, "This will happen. This will happen. This will happen." And then when it happened, Russian propaganda which had this like false narratives about like false flag attack, about I don't know some massacre on the Donbass and etc. They didn't work because there was proactive communication that this will happen, and we need to prepare the citizens. The mayors should do the same. That this kind of things will happen, and you need to build the trust. And go for the beer, go for the coffee, go with your voters, and meet them in person. And like, if I meet you in person, I will not believe that you are such a, I don't know, alien who is doing conspiracy stuff. And this saying as a person from the technological startup, technologies will not solve this problem. This is matter of education and matter of the trust in the society.
In the UK, we have such a strong sense of mayors. We've got some mayors, but far more. What we have is a lot of local councillors who typically work in quite small constituencies. And I think to some extent they are amongst the unsung heroes of at least British politics, I'm sure globally as well, who are people who literally are on the front line, who are on the doorsteps, most weeks talking to people. And that ultimately is the key thing in politics. Are you actually talking to people, listening to them, communicating and so on? And so helping them be prepared for this, helping them train for it, so that when you have whatever the local misinformation campaign starts, they're ready for it.
So the opportunity here is, and Katrien, you mentioned that it potentially frees you up as a tool to actually get back to what you should be doing, meaning talking to people, door knocking. Of course, it might also create some more work, like this question pointed out, that you also have to start fighting, but then you potentially have AI fighting AI, right? your chatbot on the local government fighting some kind of misinformation. So that's going to be interesting.
And by the way, it may make us less lazy. At the moment, there's a sense we read a bunch of social media posts, we believe that's what people think. Yes. Actually, I think those social media posts are all going to be cyber-turfed or astro-turfed out of existence. And to say a contentious issue, either a planning issue or something locally, I got to suspect that people will run campaigns using thousands of fake people to generate that stuff. So we'll end up actually discounting some of that online conversation. And the conversations that really will be valued are those face-to-face conversations where there clearly is a real human there.
That brings us back to the issue, and you touched upon it earlier, Tim, trust and ethics. How could and how should use political parties AI responsibly? You said transparency, about using it. You said the human in the loop, that someone still checks the content, makes sure that it's okay. Katrien, you are communicating for the Prime Minister of Belgium, and we all know in all countries how damaged the trust of citizens is in political parties, in politics as a whole. So how do you anticipate to signal how to use transparency, how to make sure that it doesn't undermine trust further, but actually strengthens trust in your position?
I think there the 1 and +1 in offline and online is really, really important. If what Tim says is true, is that people at the end are going to start distrusting everything which happens online because a lot of it is generated by AI, it's fake, it's chatbots, it's tools, then the offline will become even more important. Going to town halls, meeting people, door-to-door knocking, having one-on-one conversations, chat sessions with even that's online. But I mean, it's going to be even more important. I think the more insecurity there is about what's happening online is real or not real will bring people more to the offline, which is maybe not a bad thing. I think after Corona, I think people are dying to have like proper human connections rather than screens and hiding away.
I would love that happened. I wish that it will happen, but I'm still afraid that if it will happen, it will take some time. And unfortunately, still the social media have a huge impact on people. It might not, you might not believe that, but it go unconsciously, spreading the message and getting. And then there is the place for AI for good, to detect the narratives, to contradict them, to fight disinformation, and also generate to gain the productivity. Because unfortunately, from our data, we thought that most of the trolls are fake and generated somewhere in the headquarters of some dark places. But unfortunately, from our data, it's mostly real human beings who are very angry, who are very who are believing in that what they are writing, and they are fallen soldier of information warfare, and then we need to fight in a way they are spreading the message, because generally pro-democratic voters and don't need to be liberal but also conservatives, but pro-democratic voters are generally, they don't trust their party so much than the populist voters who are generally going behind the flag, and they are generally more keen to spread the message. And that's on the social media, it looks so populists are doing so well, because their voters are generally more spreading the message than voters of center-right parties.
Tim, in your role, you work with businesses a lot. I talked some time ago to the head of public affairs of a big global corporation, and they said they're experimenting with using AI to actually summarize their position papers, on politics and so on, because they have they have of course an intranet and whatever, but no one knows everything that's on there, right? So what's the position on the the Middle East conflict or whatever? So they're trying to use AI to summarize, to have them summarize for them, and to help them navigate their own knowledge, so to say. So when it comes to political parties, do you expect something similar to happen? How will it? What will political parties, you reckon, adapt, take on from businesses in the coming years?
I mean, a huge amount. Just take a step back. I think this is like the arrival of the internal combustion engine, the motor car. This is 1905. And there's a little person walking in front of the car with a red flag going, slow down, slow down. Now, you play this forward, and the world has completely changed. We have, entire industries being rebuilt by the motor car, our entire architecture has been rebuilt by the urban car. How we live our lives has been transformed by it. Wars have been fought using it. AI is going to go through the same process, and we're at the beginning of that process, and we've still not worked out yet what side of the road we drive on, whether we have seat belts, what the rules of the road are, do we have driving licenses. That's the process we're going through. Business is just starting to go through that transformation. Politics is going to go through that transformation. I think the key thing here is that all elements of society are working together such that we end up with a happier end result, and not a result that pollutes lots of people and kills millions of people in road crashes.
And sorry, Katrien,
yeah,
jump in.
A funny example on it's not just a corporate world. I heard the Mormons are actually using AI. So they have in their Gen AI, they have the Bible and the Book of Mormon. And whoever has a question, how to respond to life's challenges, they put the question in AI. AI generates an answer, and the missionaries or priests use the AI answer to help them. So I mean, it's not even just in business.
Yep.
Religions are even picking it up. Yeah, exactly. Generated by AI.
So then we're back to chatbots who help you find the right Bible verse, or in the political realm the position paper that at the moment again an intern has to then potentially look up and then send out, and this could be automated. So again, this could potentially make political parties more productive. Do you see any other things happening in business right now where you say potentially in 1 to 3 years that might end up in politics in one way or the other?
For example, you just create a very backward, if you like, very staid version of a chatbot. People come to the chatbot, have a conversation. That chatbot can be deployed in every single social media conversation. So every conversation that's happening on Nextdoor about what people think about the street cleaning or something, you could literally have your politician pops up as a chatbot and talks that. And so how could that thing be deployed far more aggressively out there to do all sorts of new things? The other one I think is interesting is, and by the way, that you clearly need transparency around. This is a chatbot talking. You need to be very clear on the rules of the road for that. But I mean, the other things, for example, is politicians use a lot of focus groups. You now see big corporates creating virtual focus groups. And so what they could do is they can test 1,000 concepts. They might have had a focus group, it took 3 weeks to put together and get everyone the right coffee and Lord knows what else, and you could test 3 or 4 things. You can now virtually test thousands of things overnight, and you probably still want to then take that to a human group at the end because you get that final link. But you can do all sorts of things with sort of focus groups that have been built digitally. And so I think there's lots of things like that which are going to come through. I suspect that the reverse may happen, which is I think a lot of innovation in business and marketing came from political campaigns, because political campaigns have to move very fast, do huge numbers of things, and in the US at least have got vast quantities of cash behind them. So the Obama types of email campaigning, I think, drove a lot of corporate sort of copy on for that, and the people who did that in the Obama campaign became the experts who then went and sold it to the business world. So I think it's going to be a two-way street, and that's why the US election is going to be so important for watching what happens.
So it will also superpower political market research, is what you're saying, because you can now test much quicker, much broader.
Don't forget, the US election is I'll make the number up, $6-10 billion exercise every year. That's a lot of marketing, expensive testing and so on, done with great speed around a very interesting place. So I think that will also, as I say, drive a whole bunch of business innovation as they watch what happens there.
And ironically, coming back to the beginning, potentially the oldest president in the history of the United States might be the first AI president of the United States. But we'll see, of course. We've been here before, and it's going to be an interesting race. All right, we're coming to the final round. Thank you so much for being here with me today. So, if you could pick one thing that has the biggest potential to change the political game from an AI perspective in the next years, what would it be? Thomas, what would you nominate?
That's a tough goal. From the technological point of view, I think the biggest change is that party should and will have their own data, and on that will build the AI. They will have their own large language models. They will, which will be connected to the social media. It will be connected to the newsletters and etc. And will help the thousands and thousands of interns, and will help the parties. I think that will be a huge change, because so far the parties were not so technologically wise and so concentrated. They use some outsourcing a lot, thankfully. But I think that will be a huge change, and there will be like huge technological departments, not huge, but there will be technological department in each party, and it must be.
So it's building the data sets to train then whatever model on, and because without it, again, we're going back to
garbage in, garbage out, and like everything written by ChatGPT is excited and thrilled to be to use, because it's still learn on American text, which they use different kind of language. So everybody will have their own GPTs.
Katrien, in your role as a communicator for the Prime Minister, what one thing would you pick where you see the most potential or game-changing potential?
Well, if you can use the data that you have within your party to have the content to bring to your audience or your voters that they're interested in, they care about, and that have that to convince them to actually then vote for you. So it's the combination of your data and then the content creation by AI that will make you, that will help you.
Thank you. Tim?
I think Josh touched totally on actually where I think the big technical shift comes, the big opportunity sits. I think that underlying that is essentially almost all the content of the data and the program that goes into that will essentially be American programming. And I think there's a coming, let's be blunt, battle for national politicians to retain ownership of the political agenda and the political narrative, and actually the political control of what happens in democracies. And I think we have a really big challenge coming down the track with the monopoly power and the concentration of power we're going to see emerging around big tech firms. And we need to be really thinking quite hard about how we make sure we retain our democratic spirit, and in Europe especially, our clear independence.
Thanks a lot, all. It has been great. It has been fun. Thanks for taking the time and for participating. Thanks as well for contributing to the audience. Great questions. Thank you very much. Do check out our new political tech vertical on the website, PartyParty. Do follow us. This event has also been recorded, so you can also get back to it. Very much thank you for sticking with us today, and looking forward to seeing you again at the next PartyParty event. Have a good day.